Hello, and welcome to the Underworld with Christina, a show that descends, transforms, and rises again. Today's the first episode of the Underworld, so welcome. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what the show is about, and then a little bit about me, and then we'll get started doing some magic tonight, some ritual, and a meditation. And we'll also talk about building an altar tonight. So this show it's launching tonight on the third Thursday in March, aligned with the spring equinox. So tomorrow is Ostara and the spring equinox. And this is the mythic moment when Persephone ascends from the underworld. And this series begins exactly when the veil between the shadow and renewal, winter and spring, is the thinnest. And then new episodes will air on the first and third Thursdays at 8 p.m. Central and 9 p.m. Eastern. The Underworld with Christina is a guided journey into the chthonic realms, a space where ancient stories, forgotten deities, and deep archetypes come alive. Each episode focuses on a different underworld or chthonic figure, a force, a concept, exploring their mythology, symbolism, and presence in modern spiritual practice. After exploring each entity or deity, we will then shift into practice. So, depending on the episode, you may experience spell work inspired by the deity or the concept, ritual designed to help connect with the underworld current, and guided journeys that invite personal insight, shadow work, and transformation. By aligning with the premiere of Persephone's Rise, the show frames the underworld not as a place of fear, but as a source of wisdom, rebirth, and magic. It's a space for seekers, witches, myth lovers, and anyone drawn to the deeper layers of the spiritual world. So, a little bit about me. I'm Christina Wilkie Burbach, and I am a spiritual transpersonal psychologist. I am a high priestess. I am an ordained minister. I'm an anthropologist, a death witch, a death doula, death walker, psychopomp psychic, modern mystic, occultist, cemeterian, and I work full time in the death care industry. And my specialty is obviously working with the dead, which we will explore in this whole series. And I'm also the author of the book Gardens for Ghosts: The Art, Ritual, and Magic of Planting for the Dead. So, tonight on the threshold aligned with the spring equinox, we begin our journey exactly when Persephone herself ascends from the underworld. This is the moment when winter loosens its grip, when the veil between the shadow and renewal thins, and when spring starts to stir. So take a breath, feel the ground beneath you, because we are beginning to enter sacred territory. And so our guide tonight is Persephone, queen of the underworld, daughter of spring, and holder of the mysteries. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Persephone's background because I think whenever you work with deities, it is very important to know their origin, their history, their mythology. I think it's very, very important. So, since we're going to do some ritual spell work and a guided journey with Persephone tonight, just sit back, relax, and let me tell you a little bit about her origin story. So many people know her as Persephone, but actually she was born Kore, which means the maiden. And she's the only child of Zeus and Demeter. And Demeter is a goddess, very much a grain goddess. So because of that, Persephone is also a grain goddess. And her life is bound to the soil and the grain. So from the first moment she was born, she carries a dual nature, a double nature. She is both a bright springtime daughter who walks in meadows, and she's also the shadowed figure who will one day rule the hidden realms beneath the earth. Her mother, Demeter, is goddess of agriculture, and Zeus, her father, is king of the gods. And they bring Persephone into a world already shaped by cycles of growth and decay. In some local traditions, like I said, she's called Kore to emphasize her youth and maidenhood. And in others, she is given names that are older, pre Greek mythology, pre Greek agrarian roots, which suggests she may predate Greek mythology and the Greek culture. Her parentage places her at the intersection of sky and earth, and Zeus's authority and Demeter's fertility together make Persephone a living emblem of seasonal renewal. While gathering flowers in a meadow, often located in the Vale of Nissa, which is a fertile plain, In Greek mythology, Persephone is drawn to a single extraordinary bloom, which many believe to be a narcissus. I'd be drawn to that bloom too. Like, I'm a huge gardener, and narcissus, which is a variety of a daffodil, is just so beautiful. So she was very attracted to that flower, and as she bent down to pick the flower up to pick it, the earth split open, and Hades, the king of the underworld, he rose in his chariot and basically he kidnapped her and carried her away to his shadowed kingdom. Accounts vary on whether Zeus secretly consented or whether Hades acted alone. So Zeus and Hades are brothers, or whether the flower itself was a lure sent by the gods. The image of the maiden plucking the flower from the surface captures her myth at its core. Life taken below, leaving the world above behind. Her mother's grief is immediate and cosmic. She wanders the earth in disguise, looking for her daughter. Like, no one had any idea that she was kidnapped and taken to the underworld. Demeter neglected all her duties, so crops failed, animals weakened, and famine spreads. And the gods, alarmed by the collapse of human life and sacrifice, press Zeus to act. So Demeter's sorrow and the resulting drought are the mythic explanation for the earth's barrenness during part of the year. When the mother mourns, the fields do not yield. So it's believed that Hermes, in some of the mythology, or Hecate, so some divine, other psychopomp divine messenger, eventually escorted Persephone back to the surface. But because she had eaten food in the underworld, the infamous pomegranate seeds, she could not be wholly freed. So the compromise binds her to spend part of each year with Hades and part with Demeter. So part in the underworld and part in the earth plane. And ancient tellings differ on the exact fraction of time, but the essential pattern remains: descent and return, death and rebirth, winter and spring. So the bargain transforms Persephone from a passive victim into a liminal sovereign who belongs to both realms. So very much, Persephone is my main deity that I work with, and I believe very deeply that she descends to the underworld around Samhain or Halloween, and she rises back to the earth plane on Ostara, or the spring equinox. So, becoming familiar with her roles, her symbols, and her meanings. Once again, she is a dual deity. She has domain over earth and over the underworld. So, she's queen of the underworld. Persephone presides over the dead alongside Hades, her husband, a dignified and sometimes fearful figure who ensures order in the hidden realm. Now, the way that she appears is really interesting. A lot of artwork shows her as like this beautiful maiden with like golden hair, but they forget like Persephone is fierce. Like, Persephone actually means the destroyer. So she's Kore while she's on the earth plane, and after her abduction and taken to the underworld from Hades, she kind of takes on a new identity as Persephone, the destroyer. So that duality of having two names and two different identities adds to that double, like the two realms, the duality of Persephone. She's also the goddess of vegetation and spring as Kore. She embodies the seed that disappears into the earth and later sprouts. Her story explains agricultural cycles. And then her symbols are the pomegranate, sheaves of grain, torches, and the torch bearing procession of the Elysian mysteries all mark her dual nature. So, what are the Elysian mysteries? I'm obsessed with them. The Elysian mysteries is kind of like I don't necessarily say a cult, because I think a lot of people misunderstand exactly what a cult is, but initiatory journey in which in ancient Greek they kind of relived or reacted Persephone's descent into the underworld, and it's very symbolic of shadow work and that hero or heroine's journey of going to the underworld, kind of doing our shadow work, like defeating a part of ourselves, learning more about ourselves, and then rising transformed, rising transcendent, rising different because of the inner work that you did. So there are still some practices, some different spiritualities, a couple different groups that actually practice the Elysian mystery. So they're very mysterious, and no one really knows what they are unless you're part of a group that actually kind of replays or does the Elysian mysteries. So, different regions and poets emphasize different aspects. Some stress her victimhood and Demeter's rage. Others highlight her authority as a queen and the initiator of those Elysian rites. Once again, just another the Elysian rites of the Elysian mysteries, just kind of another hero's journey. That whole rite of passage that we go through when we have some sort of spiritual awakening, in which we go to our own underworld and do our shadow work and then emerge transformed. And then, others in the Elysian mysteries, mother and daughter together promise initiates a hopeful afterlife. And that links together that agricultural renewal with spiritual rebirth. And then over time, when Rome kind of took all of Greek mythology and Greek gods and kind of just gave them a different name, they identified her as Proserpina. But they still kind of kept that archetype of death and rebirth and ascent and descent. So her story endures because it answers a human need to explain loss and return. She's at once a cautionary tale about forces beyond human control and a consoling myth of cyclical restoration. The seasons change, grief resides, and life returns. So, a lot of people, particularly like artists, poets, and psychologists, have long read her as a symbol of initiation, transformation, and the necessary passage between light and dark. So her like the root of her name, as I had mentioned, like the name Persephone has no single agreed upon translation, but kind of looking at like some pre-Greek, like I said, some people believe that it's pre-Greek, and then, other scholars breaking down like Persa and Pertho, they believe that her name does mean to destroy or ravage or slaughter or to bring destruction or she who brings death. And I think that really adds like an element of badassery to her. So she's a badass bitch. She really is. But I think she helps us find that badass bitch inside all of us. And then, she was Corey before she was abducted and taken into the underworld. So she has that simultaneous, like the maiden and the queen of the underworld. So she's a deliberate paradox. She's associated with both renewal and the realm of the dead. So that dual role is the cultural reason the name evokes life death cycles rather than a single moral quality. But I don't like to think of her as a victim. I like to think of her, like, her tale as initiation, as finding, like, the strength within herself. A lot of people might say, Was she abducted? Was she taken without her consent? Why did she marry him?" I think she embraced her darkness. She embraced her badassery instead of being a victim. She was kinda, I've seen some artwork with her where she's like, "I'm not a victim. Like, I looked around and I was like, I'm gonna rule this place." So to me, she's not a victim at all. So, and then she also is that kind of exists in the liminal space. So when the earth opens and Haiti rises, she doesn't simply disappear. She crosses a threshold and she transforms from Kore into Persephone. So I think, learning more about her origin story, we can learn a lot about ourselves and tap into different concepts of her mythology with ourselves and transformation and initiation and looking at difficult things we go through in our life as kind of trial by fire. And that cliche saying, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. So she learns the language of shadows when she's in the underworld and she becomes sovereign. She becomes the bridge between worlds. So every year when she rises, she brings with her the power of rebirth, not native innocent or naive innocence, but wisdom earned in darkness, kind of like a badge of honor. So this is why we're beginning with her tonight, because every descent is a doorway, every winter is a womb, and every return is a reincarnation. So just briefly kind of going over her symbolism and archetype before we begin to do a little journey and then some ritual work. So she's the archetype of descent, entering the unknown, not knowing what to expect, facing what's been buried deep inside, meeting the self beneath the self. So like your shadow self. Her archetype is transformation, shedding old identities, integrating shadow, becoming sovereign, becoming queen. And then she's also the archetype of ascent. So rising again, re-emerging with new wisdom, reclaiming her power, bringing life where there once was none. So she is literally the cycle of death and rebirth embodied. So in modern spiritual practice, we can tap into Persephone as a goddess of the underworld when we're in transitions, like moving from a job to another job, relationship transitions. I mean, we're going through transitions all the time in our life. So she definitely is someone we can tap into when we're in transition, when we're shedding an old life or an old version of ourselves and becoming a new us, when we're confronting our shadow and when you're ready to claim your own authority and become sovereign. So she's not a goddess of fear, she's a goddess of becoming. So I'm going to take you on a brief little journey to meet Persephone. So if you're in a safe place where you can close your eyes, please don't close your eyes if you're driving a car or at work or something, where you can't relax and close your eyes. You can save this for later. So if you're able to close your eyes and get in a comfortable position, and just relax, let the day behind, let it go. And let your breath lengthen. Let your awareness soften. And then just imagine yourself standing at the edge of a forest at twilight. That liminal space. It's not quite day and it's not quite dark. The air is cool. The world is quiet. And ahead of you is a narrow path leading downward. Downward. This is the path of descent. And you begin to walk. And each step down takes you deeper into yourself, deeper into memory, deeper into truth. And soon you reach a stone archway carved into the earth, and vines curl around its edges. Symbols you don't recognize glow faintly. And Persephone, the queen of the underworld, stands before the archway. She is luminous and darkness all at once. A queen crowned in obsidian and flowers. A woman who has walked through death and returned with her power. She looks at you and instantly recognizes you. And she says, "You are not here to be diminished. You are here to be transformed." And she extends her hand to you. So take a breath and feel what rises in you. Fear, curiosity, longing, resistance. Whatever it is, all of it is welcome. All of it is sacred. And when you're ready, take her hand. And you step through that archway. And inside, the underworld is not a place of torment. It is a place of clarity. A place where nothing can hide. Persephone leads you to a still dark pool. And she invites you to look into it. What do you see? A truth you've avoided? A part of yourself you've buried? A desire you denied? Whatever it is, let it surface. Let it speak. Let it be witnessed. You do not need to fix it. You only need to acknowledge it. You only need to validate it. You only need to witness it. And then Persephone places a pomegranate seed in your palm and says to you, "This is your vow to return to yourself, to rise with what you have learned." So hold that seed in your hand. Feel its weight, feel its promise. This is your gift from the underworld. And whenever you're ready, you step back through the archway and start your ascent back into the earth plane, back into your body. Feel the light returning. Feel yourself rising. So now that we've taken a little journey to meet Persephone and get a gift from her, the gift of knowledge and self-insight and self-awareness. And the journey just doesn't start tonight. Like, this is planting a seed for all of us to continue doing shadow work and deep inner work. So I want to real quickly here, as I lead you into doing some ritual spell work, about some things you might want to have on an altar to Persephone. So, how to create a Persephone altar, or the throne between the worlds. So, some of these things I would suggest is kind of meant to embody Persephone in her fullness as maiden, queen, seed bearer, and spring bearer. This is a perfect time to do this once again, since tomorrow is the spring equinox. So, this altar holds the duality she rules: shadow and bloom, descent and ascent, death and rebirth. So I would suggest an altar cloth, which is the veil between the worlds, perhaps black, or of course black, black or black velvet or linen, or maybe you want like a deep wine pomegranate color, or maybe a white or soft green to symbolize spring and return and renewal. And then a central image or statue of Persephone. So my sister went to Greece last year and got me this cool little Persephone statue. So some sort of image, a picture, artwork, a statue, or a simple flower or a stone, just something to represent her presence. And then I always have pomegranate in the house. I stock up on pomegranate around winter time because that's when it's most accessible in the northern hemisphere. Or I always have pomegranate juice in the house. So I give her pomegranate juice all the time as an offering. In fact, I just stopped pouring it in a shot glass and just start giving her the whole bottle now. So you can give her a whole pomegranate, a bowl of pomegranate seeds, a small chalice of pomegranate juice. Like I said, I give her the whole bottle now because I would give her whole pomegranates, and within a day or two, it was like completely sucked of energy. Like it looked rotten, and it was only like 2 days old. So I just give her the whole bottle now. So the juice represents the underworld, so it's the blood of the underworld. And then a candle to represent descent and ascent. So on the left side, you probably want a deep red or dark purple candle or black. And on the right hand side, to represent ascent, you want white, gold, or soft green. And I love birthday candles for spell work. I stock up on birthday candles. So seeds, soil, and growing things are some other things. So maybe a pot of soil, seeds, a growing plant or sprout. So I got some forget-me-not seeds here. Underworld stones and earth elements like obsidian, garnet. I do like ruby for her, black tourmaline, onyx, hematite. Put those around the altar. Flowers of spring. So we got like 10 inches of snow the other day, which is crazy for being March. So all my flowers are covered up right now, but I have an entire garden on the west side of my house dedicated to Persephone with narcissus, daffodil, hyacinth, cherry blossoms, um, tulips. So you can bring some of those in the house if those are growing by you right now, cut them and put them in a little vase. A bowl of water or mirror, or a black mirror, black obsidian. So we're gonna work with this more the next show in 2 weeks with a black obsidian. And then personal items for shadow and sovereignty. So, like a key, which represents thresholds, gates, sovereignty. A journal, your book of mirrors, a vial of perfume. I got some really awesome Persephone perfume that smells amazing. Shout out to Infernal Fragrances for their entire Greek mythology perfume series. It's awesome. Or a piece of jewelry. And then, optional, a little pomegranate libation bowl or glass, and you can put that for offerings or for feasting at the end of ritual. So then I would encourage you to set up your altar and then put your hands over it. And tomorrow would be an awesome day to do this, since it is when she ascends, or doing this again around Halloween when she descends to the underworld around Samhain. Put your hands over it. Persephone, queen of the underworld, maiden of spring, god of the threshold, I welcome you here. May this altar honor your descent and ascent, and may I walk your path with courage and renewal. And then, use that altar in ongoing practice. One thing I do want to encourage you is she's a chthonic deity, so her altar should probably be on the ground or ideally in a pit outside, so on the ground. So you can use this whenever you do ritual spell work, to observe the seasonal changes, for daily devotion, and for shadow work. So now we're going to end with a little spell work. I'm calling this spell the Seed of Return. So, to the purpose of this is, once again, what we already kind of talked about, why you would want to work with Persephone, to honor your descent, to claim the wisdom you've gained, to seal your ascent with intention, mirroring Persephone's own journey. So, during transitional periods, reclaiming your personal power when someone's taken it away from you or situation's taken it away from you, marking the equinox or seasonal shifts, and any moment when you feel yourself rising after a difficult cycle. So the ingredients: a small seed of any kind, anything that's meaningful to you, a candle, red, black, or like red, like the color of pomegranate, like burgundy, black or white, a small bowl of soil or a small pot, pomegranate juice, fresh is best, but bottled works beautifully too, and then a small cup or chalice. And for me tonight, it's a wine glass. So before beginning, pour a small amount of your pomegranate juice into your cup. Hold it in both hands and let its weight anchor you. Pomegranate juice, once again, is the blood of the underworld, the memory of descent, the promise of return. So I love that, because no matter how dark it gets, the sun will always rise. Once again, so cliche, but it's literally like nature is a cycle and it keeps on going forward. Even when we feel stuck, nature and the cycles and earth and the sun all keep still going forward. So when it's dark, that light will definitely return again. So the memory of descent promises ascent, promises return, and the sweetness found only after darkness. So light your candle, and as the flame rises, say, I call upon the path of descent and ascent, and I stand at the threshold of transformation. And then gaze into the candle, let the flame steady your breath. Consecrate the seed with pomegranate juice. So your little seed that means something to you, dip your fingers in the juice, touch the seed lightly. So you're kind of anointing it, marking it with the underworld's blessing. And then say to the seed, marked by shadow, blessed by depth, the seed carries the wisdom of my descent. And then the juice symbolizes the vow Persephone made when she tasted the pomegranate, a vow not of captivity, but of return. So raise the cup, take a slow sip of the pomegranate juice, and as it touches your tongue, imagine the underworld stillness, the clarity of shadow, the sovereignty Persephone claimed, and feel that juice move through you. And say, I drink the memory of my own becoming. I rise with what I have learned. And that moment seals your ascent. And then plant your seed. For me, I'm going to plant it directly in the soil tomorrow, outside in my garden. So you can plant it directly outside. You can plant it in a pot. So as you put it in the soil, gently cover it. And as you press the earth down, the soil over the seed, say, from descent, I gained wisdom. From shadow, I rise renewed. And I plant the truth I have reclaimed. And the seed is now a living symbol of your transformation. And then you can dip your fingers in that pomegranate juice again and anoint the soil. So let a few drops fall onto the soil over the seed you just planted. And say, as the seed awakens, so do I. As it grows, so does my power. So the juice becomes both an offering and a blessing, that duality, and a bridge between the underworld and the world above. And then blow out your candle, and we close the ritual. The cycle continues. I descend, I transform, and I rise. And, so that ends our ritual. And over the coming weeks, tend to the seed as it sprouts, because that's you and your transformation. And it represents being buried in the darkness, but rising again and transcending. So let the growth mirror your own growth. And so 30 minutes comes really fast. So we are now coming to the close of episode 1 of the Underworld. So thank you for descending with me tonight. As Persephone rises, so do you. So join me again on the first and third Thursdays at 8 p.m. Central and 9 p.m. Eastern as we continue our journey through the chthonic realms, meaning gods, spirits, forces, and mysteries that shape the unseen world. Until then, walk gently, walk bravely, and remember, the underworld is not the end. It is the beginning. And I'm Christina Wilkie Burbach, and you can find me all over the internet just by searching my name. You can go to my link tree, see all my offerings, take my classes, buy my book, follow me on social media. And once again, I want to thank you so very much and happy spring equinox.